was supposed to be an ordinary spring day in rural Georgia, the kind of day where no one expects their life to change. Lance Smith left home on business. Before he left, he did something thousands of hunting dog owners do every year. He put a GPS collar on his dog named Jack, a Boykin Spaniel weighing about 15 pounds, a family dog, a hunting dog, and a companion. A dog that, according to those who knew him, was part of the family. And what happened next has sparked a controversy stretching far beyond Jefferson Davis County, Georgia. Because today, nobody's arguing that Jack was shot. Nobody's arguing that Jack is dead. The question is, what happened between point A and point B? Because that's where the story gets strange, very strange. According to public statements, the shooter claims the shooting was self-defense. He says there was an attack, an imminent threat, a dangerous situation involving people and another dog. And let's be clear, if that's true, most people would agree a person has a right to protect themselves. But that's where the story starts to unravel, because Jack wasn't found at the location where the alleged attack occurred. He wasn't found beside the house. He wasn't found in the driveway, and he wasn't found near a vehicle. According to Lance Smith and police reports, Jack was found hundreds of yards away in a field on a property that reportedly wasn't owned by the shooter. Now let's stop right there and think about this a minute, because distance matters. Distance tells stories, and distance creates timelines. The threat existed near the residence. What happened during the several hundred yards? Because distance raises questions. How did everyone get from the alleged attack scene to a field? Now, according to information discussed publicly, there may be another clue. Footprints. Allegedly, footprints lead from the shooter's property towards the location where Jack was found. Now, are those footprints documented, measured, professionally photographed? We don't know. We do know that Lance took pictures, Lance's kids took pictures, and the police took pictures. But the case contains far more questions than answers. And then there's the 5 shots. Let's talk about something else, the number 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. According to Lance's public statements, Jack was reportedly shot 5 times in the head. 5 times. Not 1, not 2, 5. Now, eventually, every investigation reaches a point where emotion has to step aside. Evidence takes over, because evidence doesn't care what people believe. Evidence only cares what happened. And those things tell stories, stories that don't change. The question is, what does the story tell? Because if Jack was actively attacking, that matters. If Jack was fleeing, that matters too. And right now, the public doesn't have enough information to know which is true. But we do know that it's alleged that a warning shot was fired. Lance published a video, and with it came new questions. According to Lance, a warning shot was allegedly fired. Now think about that. A warning shot introduced into the timeline. Before the warning shot and after the warning shot, what happened in between? And if a warning shot did occur, why? What was Jack doing at the moment? Was he approaching? Was he retreating? Was the threat escalating or ending? Because understanding when the shot occurred could be one of the most important pieces of the entire puzzle. And Lance asked a simple question. If the threat had already been addressed, why was a warning shot necessary? It's a fair question. And like others in the case, it remains unanswered. But if this were a movie, this is where the mysterious object enters the story. The Garmin tracking collar. Because according to Lance Smith, Jack was wearing a GPS collar. And then Jack is found, but the collar isn't there. Gone, missing, vanished. The term was used, it grew wings and flew away. Well, maybe it fell off. Maybe it was damaged. Maybe there's a simple explanation. But things get even stranger. Because according to Lance, the collar is eventually located. Not beside Jack, not near Jack, not even close. According to Lance, the collar was recovered approximately half a mile away in a ditch filled with water. And that's where people start asking questions because GPS collars have a job. Their entire purpose is recording information: date, time, speed, direction, location. They even keep up with how fast the dog is running in a certain direction. They don't care about opinions. They don't care about social media arguments. They simply record where they've been, which means if Garmin data exists, it may tell a story nobody can argue with. Where was Jack? Where did he travel? How fast was he moving? When did he stop moving? That when did he stop moving is very important. We would assume that's when he was shot 5 times in the head in a field that didn't belong to the shooter and was a couple of 100 yards from the shooter's house. But when he stopped moving, the collar should have stopped moving and should have never moved again. But it did. And this is a good time to bring up that when the collar was found, it appeared to be covered in dried blood. So the biggest question of all is, how did the collar get from Jack to a ditch? Now let's pause for a moment, because if you're not a hunting dog owner, you may not understand why people keep talking about this collar. To some people, it's just a dog collar. To hunting dog owners, it's something very different. It's a witness. It's an impartial digital witness. You see, modern Garmin tracking collars aren't just radio transmitters. They're computers. It's a small computer worn around the dog's neck. And those computers are constantly collecting information. Where the dog is, where the dog's been, how fast the dog's moving, what direction the dog's traveling, when it stopped, when it started. And it all depends on the model. That information can be stored and reviewed later. Now think about that. You take your Garmin collar, you hook it to a computer, and you pull the data off of it. I personally own a collar just like the one Lance said he used. It was a Garmin TT15. I own one myself. I recently updated my collars, and I decided to pull the data off my collars. My TT15 mini collar had information on hunts on it that went back a couple of years. So think about that for a minute. My collar was keeping information from hunts that I participated in 2 years ago. Most witnesses forget things. GPS devices don't. They don't get emotional, and they don't take sides. And they don't change their story. You know, the story might be they attacked me at the front door, they attacked me at the back door, wouldn't let me out of my car. The GPS collar doesn't get into all that, but it doesn't change its story. It'll tell you the dog was standing at this point, the dog was moving, the dog was doing this, the dog was doing that. They simply record time, date, position, speed, direction, over and over and over. And you can pull these plots out of that collar and you can put them on a map. Now let's imagine for a moment the Garmin collar retained its tracking information. What questions could that data answer? A lot. possibly more than any witnesses. It could potentially show where Jack was when the encounter began. It could potentially show where Jack was if he was moving towards someone or away from them. It could potentially show whether Jack ran hundreds of yards or whether he stopped somewhere along the way. It could potentially establish a timeline down to a minute and sometimes seconds. Now, GPS data isn't magic, but it does tell you why something happened or where it happened. And location is very powerful because once you know something happened, you can compare it to witness statements and you compare it to physical evidence. You can compare it to timelines. And suddenly you get a much clearer picture of what happened. Imagine this. Jack comes to rest in the field a couple of 100 yards from the house where he supposedly was involved in an attack. That caller would have came to rest with Jack. Now, if Jack was just shot in the head 5 times, Jack's not going to move anymore. He's done moving forever. But somehow the caller wound up a half a mile away with blood on it in a ditch. The caller was still recording its location when it left the dog and went to the ditch. I wonder what those tracks say. I wonder if they show the caller going to anybody's house in particular and then possibly traveling down the driveway and then down the road to where it was thrown in the ditch. I don't know. I don't have the tracks. I'm just saying, imagine if it tells that. This is a good time to mention that removing a tracking collar from a dog in Georgia is a crime. I'm pretty sure it's a felony level crime in Georgia. It's not in North Carolina, but I think it is in Georgia. So, do you think that the GPS collar might be interesting to investigators if they wanted answers? Because when the collar became separated from the dog, it was still recording. The next question becomes when, where, and how. The collar itself may know, because unlike people, the collar was there and it does not care about public opinion. Its entire job is remembering where it's been. The Garmin collar may become the most important witness in this thing. So we got 3 locations, point A, point B, and point C. Suddenly this case doesn't look like it's about 1 location anymore. It's about 3. The residence, the field, and the ditch. The residence is where the alleged attack occurred. Field is where Jack reportedly was found. And the ditch is where the GPS collar was recovered. And connecting those 3 locations may ultimately explain everything, because every question in this case seems to point back to those 3 locations and what happened between them. Now, here's why this is important. If you've ever studied any type of self-defense, the law in many states allows you to use self-defense to protect yourself, an innocent person, and in the case of animals, you can protect your animals from other animals' attack. You can protect your livestock and that type of stuff. So that's important in this case because the shooter is claiming self-defense in his shooting. He's saying that he was attacked. So if you've studied any type of self-defense at all, you understand that at the moment that the threat exists, you can use force. For example, if the dog is actively attacking you or showing its teeth or acting like it's going to charge you and bite you, that's when you can use force. And depending on the situation, the force might be as simple as shooing it away with a broom. It could be deploying some type of chemical agent like pepper spray, or it could be full-blown deadly force. You know, it depends on the situation. It has to be reasonable. The problem is, it's when the threat is gone. The ability to use that force legally is also gone. I'll give you an example. If a dog is attacking you actively attacking you, trying to bite you or biting you, you have the legal right in most states to defend yourself with up to and including deadly force. That makes sense, doesn't it? So if the dog is actively attacking you or showing its teeth or growling at you or something like that, and you yell at the dog and throw something at the dog, or in this case, fire a warning shot, and the dog runs away. When the dog starts running away, you've accomplished your mission. The threat is over. Does that make sense? At what point can we say that the authority to use force against this dog carried 200 yards into a field? Because let's face it, the dog didn't get shot in the head 5 times and run out into that field and die. This is kind of graphic, but Lance's son, when I talked with him, told me that he didn't even know where his dog's eyeballs were. So he literally lost his eyes in this use of force. Think about that. That dog didn't get in the middle of that field under his own power. So as the story spread, something else happened. People took sides. Some immediately believed the shooter. Some immediately believed Vance. And that's where investigators doesn't care which side you're on. The truth is often hiding somewhere in the evidence. And to Lance's credit, in his latest video, he specifically told supporters not to threaten anyone, and he urged people to allow the legal process to work. That's important because threats don't solve cases. Evidence solves cases. Facts solve cases. So as of today, we know Jack's dead. We know he was shot. We know a GPS collar reportedly existed. We know that that collar was recovered away from the dog. We know the body was reportedly recovered away from the alleged attack location. And we know both sides have dramatically different interpretations of what happened. But here's the thing. Every major mystery eventually comes down to one simple question. It's not what people think happened. It's not what people want to have happened. It's what actually happened. And what happened between the residents in the field is a big deal. Because what happened in the field and the ditch, what does the GPS data show? What does the witness statement show? And what does forensic evidence show? Because somewhere between point A, point B, and point C, the truth exists. And eventually, the evidence will either answer these questions or create more of them. Thank you for listening. I'm Todd Edwards on TicBite NC. And until the evidence tells the full story, the questions surrounding Jack's death will remain unanswered. You hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss future podcasts, breaking news, investigations, hunting stories, and the issues that matter most to the community. If you enjoyed this video, help us out by giving it a thumbs up, leaving a comment, sharing it with your friends and hunting partners. Every like, comment, and share helps more people discover the channel and allows us to bring these stories to the public. We want to hear from you. What's your thoughts on today's topic? Leave your opinion in the comments below. If you'd like to support the channel financially, you'll find our PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo information in the description below. Your support helps cover equipment, travel, record requests, software, hosting, production costs associated with bringing you the podcast, investigations, and stories that often go untold. Thank you for supporting TicBite NC. I'm Todd Edwards.